So moving along here, so that's really what I did in Israel, and wrote a lot to try and kind of write a kind of record of this. I wrote 4 or 5 books to try and kind of, get a sense of how this worked, that I published, and then another 4 or 5 books of kind of more esoteric stuff on kind of what I call non-dual humanism, which are now being published, and it's kind of, you got to knock out a few books, because in Judaism there's these 24 sacred books, so which means that God basically spends a lot of time writing, and you're commanded to imitate God. So you've got to spend a lot of time writing also. That's kind of how it works. So kind of the Hebraic imperative of the metat yodeh, that is the imitation of the divine, is to write. So I kind of spend a certain amount of time writing. And so that's really what I did for about God knows how long. And then at a certain point, I had actually published an article in a magazine called Tikkun. I'm kind of to tell you how, this is all about how we got to this room. And Tikkun is a kind of left-wing, interesting magazine published by a mutual friend of ours now. He's in our energetic circle, Michael Lerner. And so I just saw Michael actually the other day, and the article was about levels of consciousness, which was a kind of core idea in my teaching for many years, about the prophets and the pagans. And now the prophets and the pagans, they're actually different levels of consciousness, but they're actually in conversation with each other, which we'll actually maybe get to talk about a little bit here over the weekend. And so somehow or another, Ken saw the article, Ken Wilber, and we got together and spent 6-7 hours kind of chatting. And we spent, I think, about 2 years, I think it was, about kind of very, very intensive dialogues. We must have done 30, 40 dialogues, kind of all the time, on the phone and in person, and kind of tried to create some sort of kind of, deep shared space. I was in Ken's world, we were kind of doing that kind of guy thing. When I say a guy thing, I don't mean man or woman, because women can do the guy thing also. We're doing that guy bandwidth thing. We were just kind of having fun, talking. It was just very, very enjoyable. We tried to create some structures of thought that actually would be helpful. One of them that emerged was this idea of the second face of God, which we'll talk about on Sunday. And another was an idea called the unique self. There's a bunch of ideas that have kind of gotten incorporated in that, integral thing from those talks, which is really nice. But the best part was I met some really great, great, great new friends. Among them, who Diane mentioned, Swami Durgananda, Sally Kempton, who's a close friend of Diane and mine, and David Data. But most of all, Diane. Dan and I met and became good friends. When the rabbi meets the sensei, what happens? Trouble. Just trouble. All along. So we've all managed to get into kind of sufficient amount of trouble, thank God. And we've had kind of that's kind of the story. A little backdrop of the story, just because it's what is. About 2 years ago, I went through a kind of minor, or maybe major, maybe it was major, it wasn't minor, it was major kind of life explosion. I had actually tapes off, that actually fired my assistant. Never do that. Never fire your assistant. Ken said to me, Colin, who's Ken's assistant, he's a great, sweet guy. He said, God, if I ever fired Colin, I'd be in such trouble. So he should have told me before. So I actually let an assistant go who was slightly unhappy with me, and kind of went through my Rolodex and found like a bunch of women I'd gone out with, and kind of they wanted to kind of bring down the ship, which they actually did. And they filed what kind of false police complaints of sexual harassment. It was kind of uncomfortable. And it took me about a year and a half, which we just finished, to actually recover my entire computer. Oh my God. Recover hard drive to kind of falsify them, which we just did. And that's about to go out on a website and blah, blah, blah. But I actually sat quietly for a couple of years, and until the computer was reconstructed. And since I was a rabbi in the Galilee, that's where our center was, kind of a countercultural rabbi in the Galilee. So countercultural rabbis in the Galilee need to get crucified before resurrection. It's kind of a historical thing. You live in the Galilee.
It's a requirement.
You walk on water, you get crucified, you do resurrection. It's just the way it goes. I should have known before I moved in. They should have told me. Don't you think? Yeah.
So, is Jesus a rabbi?
Jesus, total. Totally. Yeah, total rabbi.
I didn't know that.
He was an alternative rabbi.
He was an alternative rabbi.
Yeah.
Was he?
He was, actually. He was
They refer to him as rabbi in the New Testament.
He was the first countercultural Hebrew wisdom movement in the first century.
That's incredible.
Total rabbi. Yeah.
And I just came back from Jerusalem. I just spent a week there.
Yeah.
Walking
Complete
down,
rabbi.
walking and all that.
Right.
Those places.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not taught that way to
No, it's not.
Christians.
It's not.
Yeah.
They left that part out,
Yeah.
There's a funny in ecumenical talk, Jewish Christian ecumenical talk, kind of comes to the closest introduction of the California people come in. When Jews and Christians get together and do ecumenical talk, someone once said it's like when you guys know ecumenicism, that movement? Ecumenicism is something that happened, in the early 60s, when basically, after Pope John, who was one of the most gorgeous human beings who ever lived, right, was actually probably killed, killed. After Pope John kind of left us, he left an inheritance, which became what's called Vatican II.
Oh my God, I didn't know you
Oh
were
my
coming
God.
up here.
Oh my God.
Hey, good to see you, Liz.
Hi, how are you?
Yo. Hey guys. We actually started at 3, so we're going to be finishing in a couple of minutes, and I'm glad you made the end. So, in ecumenicism, which was actually Vatican II, that was the beginning of the church's move to actually let go of the notion that, Augustine's notion, there's no redemption outside of the church. And when you actually look at the chart, right, you see that there's something called blue there on the chart. So the blue level of consciousness means it's called mythic membership, meaning life's organized in a way which is not based on bloodline or family, right, which is like purple, level of consciousness below it. Blue means you can join, you can be part of the redemptive people. But if you don't, you're not redeemed. You follow? So the level below, and all through this, we're going to do a little integral takes. All through this, purple means we're part of the same family. The mafia is purple, family, right? Shamanism, we're part of the same, that's a purple level of consciousness. Blue means you don't have to be part of the same family, you can buy into the system. The problem is if you don't buy into the system, you burn in hell for all eternity. That's the shadow of blue. Okay, so Augustine writes, right, there's no redemption outside of the church. So that's kind of a blue level. What was I talking about? Why was I talking about blue? Remind me. You gotta stand this here, Ecumenicism, thank you.
Jesus was a rabbi.
So Jesus was a rabbi. So that was the last thing you remember, thank you. So we'll actually get serious here for a second. So ecumenicism was this idea that, blue was going to let go of its blue quality. Right, that actually blue was going to say it's possible to achieve some level of redemption, right, without being part of blue. That was ecumenicism. The problem is that if you're really blue, you can't believe that. Right? So if you're a Mormon, right, only Mormons go to the celestial family. You can't join the celestial family if you're not, if you read the stuff, it just doesn't work. We got to be nice to everybody, as all the church precedents say, but celestial family, got to be a Mormon. Catholic, read good doctrine, not part of the church, not in the game. So ecumenicism was basically this beginning to try and blunt those edges. The problem is the real blue people who really died in blue, wool, wouldn't come because it was against the religion. So it turned out that ecumenicism was when Jews who didn't believe in Judaism got together with Christians who didn't believe in Christianity, and they discovered they had a lot in common.
That's what the movement was.
That was the first ecumenical movement. Right around that time, Lenny Bruce appears. Remember Lenny Bruce? Lenny Bruce? And Lenny Bruce kind of walking around the States, and he's saying, it's like 64, 65, he's getting arrested all over the place. The police in Chicago hate him, and he hates ecumenicism. He hates it because, not because he's blue, because just everyone's just being too nice. So he starts doing this routine saying, I'm Jewish, we killed him. He's in my basement. I'm going to kill him. I saw him in my basement. That's where he is. Down church, take a look, goodbye. Right, that was his kind of, routine. So that's not true, by the way. We didn't kill him. But gotta make that clear. So but I was actually in the Galilee, for many years, actually right around all the spots. And we actually we went intentionally to the Galilee to try and start a kind of mystical movement which would re-examine everything. Could we re-examine kind of eros and re-examine unique self and re-examine the whole story and try and go into what I like to call the source code. To go into the source code. The source code means you're not playing on the surface, but you try and enter the inside of the story and go to the place where it was formed. And when you go to the place where it was formed, then you have the ability to hear it in a different way. Not only to hear it in a different way, but also to shift it, to change it. So most of the play we do in the world is on the surface of the computer, right? But once in a while, you have a moment where you can kind of enter the source code. And from that place, try and revision the whole story. And that's what we're going to try and do a little bit this weekend. Try and go a little bit into kind of the source code of loving, right? But to kind of go underneath and see like what's there, what's there, and how does it play, and what's the dance of love, and what are the shadows of loving, and what's the pain of eros, and how do we practice the wounds of love, and bring together, our life experience, the sacred texts, the best in psychology, right, the best in kind of contemporary technologies, and try and weave it, right, in a tapestry of loving that will actually, the test of it is, there's a great test. Where is this? Hafez always has the best tests of loving. Mm-hmm. That's what we like about Hafez. So we actually wanted to set up a little standard to decide whether the weekend had succeeded or not.
By the way, he's a 13th century Persian poet from the Islamic tradition, one of the most beautiful love poem writers.
Hafez is completely beautiful. And we had talked about earlier about whether we were going to hand out evaluation forms, and we decided not to, but we're going to set up an evaluation, with this poem just as we start. So the poem's called